Too much. Yeah.
David with a sense of humor. Okay, we are on 43A. Right? The last thing we were discussing was Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak had a more stringent opinion, and his stringent opinion was that a non-muksa item can only be moved for a purpose of a non-muksa item can only be moved for a non-muksa item. You can't move a non-muksa item for the purpose of a muksa item. That was and therefore, according to his opinion, you will not be able to cover an egg on Shabbat, an egg that was laid on Shabbat. If you want to cover it with a plate, the egg, being that the egg is mukseh, you can't cover the egg with a plate because you're moving a plate, a non-movable item, for the purpose of a non-movable item, because the egg is mukseh. So that was on the bottom of 43A2. The Amar Rav Yitzchak Kisheim Shein Noten Kli Tachat Tanakola Dekaba Beisata. Just like you can't put a utensil under a hen to catch its egg, so too Kach Ein Kofin Aleh Kli B'Sheto Shaveh. You can't cover a egg with a utensil in order the egg shouldn't break. Why? Because Sava holds ain't clean it out. A utensil can only be moved. Ella the Dava Hanita b'Shabbat. Only something that's moved on Shabbat, but you can't move an item for something which is not moved on Shabbat. You can't move a movable item for the purpose of a non-movable item. Okay, now you're on 43A3, top of the page. Meitive kolan et yufta. The Gemara asked all these questions, which seems to indicate that you can move a movable item for a non-movable item, like the story of the tevel, right? The barrel broke, and you can bring another utensil to catch the contents of the barrel, even though it's tevel, and tevel is mukseh, because you didn't take off the tithes, and other questions that were all similar questions that you could cover. You could cover take a plate and cover a candle, a light that in order the light shouldn't take hold of the beam, even though you're doing it for the purpose of muktzah. So they answered all these questions that they answered in the shani b'serach komo when you needed the movable item for its place. So once you move it because you need it for its place, then you can actually move it even for the purpose of a muksa item. Because once I have it up, once I was able to pick up, I had a right to pick up the utensil for the purpose I needed the place where the utensil was on. Now I had the hammer. I need the hammer for or the let's say I had a plate and I wanted one assignment. I want the place where the plate was. I can move the plate because I need the place, and once I need the place, once I moved it, it's in my hand. I can actually use it. I mean to cover the muksa item. Is that clear? And if you want to send to the group that we're on. So, Simon, we are on 43A3. The Gemara says, then the Gemara says, Tashma. I have other questions. An egg that was born on Shabbat, an egg that born on Yom Tov, which both are mukseh. We say because the egg wasn't prepared, David, before Shabbat, right? It wasn't in the world, right? The egg wasn't in the world before Shabbat. The egg is mukseh. You can't move the egg. You move the egg to cover up a utensil. You want to use the egg as a bottle. You have a wine bottle, and you don't want to leave the wine bottle open overnight. They threw out the cork, right? They threw out the cork overnight when the waiter threw out the cork, right, David? So now you don't want to leave that bottle. Maybe a bug is going to go into that bottle, a fly. So what do? You go ahead and you cover. You cover it, right? You covered it with. You took an egg. You take an egg. Anything you got to cover. I take tissues. I take napkins. I take whatever I got. I don't want to leave a bottle of wine open overnight. I don't know what's going into that bottle of wine. So it says you cannot use an egg to cover the bottle. The egg that was born on Shabbat, you can't use it to cover the bottle, or to help out with the leg of the bed to help support it. But of a kofan kli, you could use the egg to cover up. You could use the utensil to cover up the egg morning, Asaf. In order that the egg shouldn't break. But again, you're moving the utensil for the purpose of the egg. So we see you can move a movable item for a non-movable item. Hachinami, the Gemara says you could also answer over here the Sarachim Komo. You needed the place. So once you needed the place where the plate was, so once you have a right to move it for the place, and then you have a right to move it even for the muksa. Keep on moving and holding it for the muksa, which I think is a chidush. That's a chidush, right? What's the chidush? The chidush is, the novelty is that even though I can't move, I can't move a movable item for the purpose of a non-movable item, but once I have it in my hand, because I had a right to pick it up, because I needed the spot where I needed the spot, now I can now move it for the purpose of I needed this spot, this area. We need this area to be clear, right, David? Quantum are coming up. We don't want things bolting on into knocking into quantum. I needed this spot. Once I needed this spot, I was able to move this for this spot. Then I could already move it even for continue holding it and moving it for the purpose of a what? Of mukseh. So Tosfos points out, listen, didn't the Gemara know we could have answered this answer? Why do you ask the question? If you gave me last time the answer was you needed the place. So why do you have to ask me another question? When the answer is obvious, you could say the same thing, that the reason why you're allowed to move it is because you needed the place. Once you move it because you need the place, then you can even continue moving it for the mukseh. So Tosfos says because the Gemara, the rabbi who asked the question knew you could have answered that answer, but he wanted to know if there's another answer, a different answer. Like the Gemara's going to see a different answer for something else. So maybe there's a different answer, maybe you could or not. That's why he asked the question. Sometimes I ask the question, I want to know what you're going to answer. Right? I wonder if, right, Simon, you can give me the same answer as before, or there's another reason why this works. Toshma, person masot agabe avonim b'Shabbat. Here we have another case. You're covering, you're taking a mat and you're covering stones, right? You don't want the stones, let's say the rain, and you don't want the stones to get all wet with the rain, or the stones now. Whoa! The great Yaron. Good to see Yaron, one of the holy Jews of France today. He's keeping up France. Him and his family is keeping up France. He's a big time, David, big time celebrity. He's visiting from France, David. He used to be one of the regulars every day. Yeah. Yaron, great. Good morning. We are on 43A3. We're learning about mukseh. We are on the bottom. We are on the first column, second column, top of the page. Person masalot. You got a 43A3. Person. Now, just to bring everyone up to date, we have a major discussion here in the Gemara regarding mukseh on Shabbat. There's certain things we can't handle on Shabbat. And the question is, how far did the rabbis go with this fence, or that the rabbis instead of mukseh, which is for our purpose? The fact that we can't handle everything on Shabbat is for what purpose, David? It's for us. Number one is, the Rambam writes that the rabbis wanted that Shabbat should not be like every other day of the week, that you handle everything. So the fact that you can't handle everything, and if you handle everything on Shabbat, then you won't be resting on Shabbat. You'll be always busy moving things around, like a lot of Americans do on Sunday morning. Where are they? In the garage. They're in the garage. What do they do? How do they spend their time every Sunday morning, right, David? They're in the garage. They're moving things around the whole day. What did you say, David? Garage, yeah. They're busy in the garage, in their own garage. They're busy. That's how because they're off from work. So how they spend their time. Some people are shining their cars in certain communities, but that's how they spend their time. But the rabbis don't want us to do that on Shabbat. They don't want us getting busy with everything. And instead of resting and relaxing and focusing and learning and growing and being in shul and doing other things on Shabbat, good morning, Ezra. So therefore, the rabbi said you can't handle everything on Shabbat. That's one reason. The Rambam lists many reasons. In places that there's no Eruv, many places the rabbis wanted to protect it. You should have come to carry into the street on Shabbat. If you can handle everything, you might come to carry into the street. You might come to carry as a fence to protect what's that? Might be a small Gemara there. Thank you. Very good. And so the rabbis created this fence of muksa. Now I can't move a muksa item on Shabbat. There are certain circumstances I can move it. If I need the place where the muksa is, if the muksa is it's not like depending on what level of muksa. Like there's a distinction between money. I can't move if I have money here on the table. I can't move it. I left a tzedakah. I can't move because I need the place. That I can't do on Shabbat. But if I left a hammer on the table and I needed the place, I could move the hammer because I need the place where the hammer is. Right? The hammer is a kli, a utensil that's used for prohibited purposes. But if I need the place where the hammer was left, I can move it. But if I need if I need the place where the money was left, I can't move it. I could move it kalachayad. We said you want to move it with your elbow, you want to knock it down with your elbow, not kick it with your foot. You could do that, but you can't handle the money pick up the money with your bare hand, right? Right, David? That's what we spoke about. So now, what about if I want to move a muksa item? Sorry, a non-muksa. I want to move a non-muksa item. I have a plate. I have a cup, and I want to take that cup. And I had an egg that was laid on Shabbat. An egg that was laid on Shabbat. So that's muksa. And I want to go ahead and cover the egg. But I have a hammer on the table, and I want to move a plate to cover the hammer. Or I left the hammer outside. I'm in Deal, New Jersey, and I have a table outside, and I left my hammer outside, and it's going to rain. And I don't want it to get rusty. I don't want my hammer to get rusty, right? I can't move the hammer for that reason because I don't want it to get rusty. If I need the place, if I need to eat where the hammer is, I can move the hammer, right? If I need to use the hammer to crack open a walnut, I could use it to crack open a walnut. I can't bang a nail into the wall with that hammer, right? But now can I move the hammer because I don't want the sun to shine on my hammer? That's not a good enough reason to move the hammer. I don't want it to get rusty from the rain. It's not a good enough reason. But right? That's what we understand. Now, what about if I want to move a plate and take a plate to cover the hammer? The plate is not mukseh, but I'm moving the plate for the purpose of mukseh. So Rav Yitzchak has a stringency. That's his stringency. That doesn't seem like that's the halacha. That you can't move a plate. You can't move a plate for the purpose, and you can't move a non-mukseh item for the purpose of a mukseh item. You hear that, David? That's what he holds. That's his opinion. And the Gemara is questioning his opinion. And that's just to bring Yaron up to date. Rav Yitzchak holds you cannot move a non-mukseh item for the purpose of mukseh. Got that, Ezra? So now on 43, Ezra, 43A3, top of the page, right column, 43A3. So listen to the Gemara's question. You could go ahead and spread a mat on top of stones. So stones are mukseh. What's the purpose? Stones don't have a use. What use to have stones? Go out in the street. You have 1,000 stones on the ground. The pebbles? What do they have to? They're not. They have no use for me to use on Shabbat. I can't build with it. I can't build on Shabbat. And in general, they're not. What use? It's mukseh. It's separated from use. It's not a usable item, right? The pebbles in the street, David, are they a usable item? The dirt in the street, is it usable? No, it's mukseh. And what do we say? I could go ahead and spread a mat on top of stones on Shabbat. On Shabbat, well, I don't want the stones to get wet. But how can I do that? I am moving a movable item for the purpose of an immovable item. The mukseh, I'm moving the mat, a mat. You have a mat. It's not mukseh. And I'm I'm using it for the purpose of an immovable item for the mukseh, for the stone. So the Gemara says, you know what the case is talking about? It's talking about sharp stones that are sharp, that are able to be used when a person goes to the bathroom to clean oneself. So therefore, it's not mukseh. Meaning the stone that you're covering is not the normal stone that has no use. It's from a specific type of stone that people use for bathroom purposes. The chazyan lebeit hakiseh, they're fit for the bathroom purposes. Therefore, you're moving the mat to cover a non-mukseh item, because this stone is non-mukseh. Now, the Gemara continues.
So what if you want to put those mat on the stone for the purpose that you need to walk through?
So you're saying, so you're not doing. See, then you're not doing it for the mukseh. You're doing it for your purpose. That would be fine, because you're doing it not for you're covering the stone, not because you're interested in the protecting the muksa item. You're covering the stone because you want to be able to walk there. So that shouldn't be a problem. But if you're covering the stone because you want to do it for the stone, that you don't want the stone to get wet and get not get all soggy, and that will be you don't want that. That's for the purpose of the stone, and that you won't be able to do. But your case, Simon, seems to be fine because you're putting the mat on top of the stone. On top of the stone, you're not moving the stone. You're just putting on top of the stone, and you're not doing it for the purpose of the stone. You're doing it for the purpose that you should be able to what to walk, and that's a permitted thing. So the Gemara shoots back. Tashma. Porsin masolot agabi levanim. Everyone have it? Anyone needs to have that? Porsin levanim. Porsin. You could spread a mat agabi levanim b'Shabbat on top of. But stones generally have no use. An item that has no use, God bless you. Item has no use. It's not. It's like, what does the word mukseh means? You separated it from use. So there are certain things that by itself are separated. You don't need to do anything to separate it from use, because you were separated from use because you have no use for it. What am I doing with all the stones in the street? I have no use for it. I have no purpose for it. They're just there. They're taking up space, whatever they're there for. But I don't have use for it. When Shabbat comes, my mindset and the stones, I'm at different places. I am not connected to the stones. I'm not looking to use the stones. It's separated from me from use. And being that's the case, that's called mukseh. So the stones have a status of just like money. I can't use money on Shabbat, right? Because it's money, right? A $10 bill. I have no use for it on Shabbat. Good morning. It's separated from me from use. I can't now. I decide I want to pick up the money. I can't pick it up because it's separated from my use. So too the stones. Shabbat comes. What use do I have for stones that are in the street?
Money had use. Stones never had use.
That's true. That is true, David. You're correct. But on Shabbat, money has no use. So therefore, when Shabbat enters my mind, now on Shabbat, I want to go in and take the money, and I want to go in and cover the wine bottle with the money. I can't take that dollar bill and put it on flat because I don't want anything fall. There's no wind. Okay, so it's not going to fall off. So I don't want a bug to come in. So I want to take the money, or I want to take that money, and I want to put it just on top. I want to stick it in a little bit just to close that hole a little bit. I can't do that on Shabbat. Hey, how's that sound? A dollar bill. Okay. The wine is worth $20. The dollar bill, okay, it's not ruining it. I fold it up. I can't do that on Shabbat because you're right. It had use during the, but it has no use on Shabbat. So therefore, it's mukseh. You don't have to be money to be mukseh. You can be a stone. So now the Gemara says, Tashma, Porsin masalot agabi levanim b'Shabbat. So here you have stones. We have bricks. Now, what are bricks made for? Bricks are made to go ahead and for building purposes. So come Shabbat, I'm separated from the bricks. The bricks are separate from me. And therefore, bricks are, you would classify a brick. Rabbi, I have a brick here. What's the status of a brick? Yeah, you ever see all the construction, they leave their materials out in the street, right? Overnight, right? Those are mukseh. Can I move those? Can I move those things? I have someone doing work for me, right? I don't. But if I would have someone doing work for me in my house and deal, which I don't own, and he's working with the bricks, right? They had to do some brick work, right, David? and he didn't finish the job yet. He has some bricks outside the house. Can I move those bricks on Shabbat? I want, so those bricks are mukseh. I don't want the rain to get onto the bricks. So I can't move those bricks because I don't want the rain to get on it. The bricks are mukseh, right? Now here it says, but if I don't want to move the bricks, I want to cover the bricks. Okay, they say there's many ways to slice a cat, or something like that, right? With the skin a cat. I don't know what the expression goes, but skin a cat. I don't skin cats either, by the way. But I don't want the rain to get on it, so I can't move it. But if I could cover it, how do you like that? I can't move the mukseh, but I have another way to get that. I have a job that needs to get done. I don't want the bricks to get wet, so I can't move the bricks into the shed, but I could cover the bricks with a mat. But the Gemara's question is, how can I do that? I am moving a movable item, a cover, a mat, over for the purpose of a muksa item, which is the bricks. And Rabbi Yitzchak's opinion, not that that's a halacha, Yitzchak's opinion was you can't move a non-movable item for the purpose of a muksa item. So the Gemara says, Porsim masol agav levenu b'Shabbat. So how are you able to go ahead and do that? So the Gemara answers, the ishtayeh mibinyana. These bricks were left over from the building. They finished the job and deal. They finished the work with the bricks. Now they have extra bricks. Now, people do with it. They use those bricks to lean on. We're getting ready for they're getting ready for Pesach. Pesach, we have a mitzvah to recline, right? You recline at the Seder when you eat the matzah, all the time you eat the matzah, and when you go ahead and you have the 4 cups of wine, right? You have to lean on your left side, right? I saw that the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says even by the karpas, the celery or the potato in the salt water, also you go ahead and you lean. We have to see. I don't know what the Sephardi custom is on the karpas, but right when the bricks that are left over, people use it to lean on. But as you know, when they would eat in those days, they would lean, they would recline. And once we're not using the bricks anymore for building purposes, so they are used for that type of purpose. So they're not mukseh. You plan on using the standing to be used for like a pillow. Like we have, people use a pillow at the Seder, right? People use a pillow. Yeah, Ron, do you use a pillow at the Seder? Oh no, what's your custom in France? What? On the couch. You have the pillow of the couch, right? What are people who are sitting on chairs? What do we use? At least what?
Like grandfather's house. You sit on the floor.
Yeah, the pillow, and you lean on the pillow. You see that? Simon is doing an illustration, right? I'll tell you how Rabbi Feinstein, Rabbi David Feinstein, you've met him, Rabbi David Feinstein. Aaron met Rabbi David Feinstein. See that? Remember that? And Rabbi Feinstein would say, you go like this. He would turn the chair because you're leaning against. Maybe he had a pillow too. Not with the. But even if you have a pillow, you should be leaning against something. How do you like this? I got something here. I'm leaning against something. I think if you look at the halacha, just to go like this, even on a pillow, is not the ideal. It's not the ideal way to do it. Best to turn. We have to look more into the halacha, but best to turn your chair and go against when that's. Or if you have a chair that has an armrest, that's the same thing. Many chairs, when you're at a seder, many chairs have, an armrest that also will serve the purpose. You're going against something, right, Yaron? So that is so the Gemara says, so that's why the Shtayim b'binyan the Chazyan lemizgalayo is fit to lean on, and it's no more separated from use, that brick. Tashma, porsin marcelet agabe kaveret dvorim. B'Shabbat, you have a beehive, right? The bees make their honey, And it says you're allowed to go ahead and spread a mat on top of the beehive on Shabbat when b'chama. If b'chama during the Gemara's understanding now during the sunny season, during the summertime, because of the sun. You don't want the sun. Now, what are you doing it for the purpose? You are, in order to protect, right? So you are protecting the hive. You're protecting the beehive from the sun. So it won't heat down on the beehive. You could do that on the sun in the summer because of the sun. You can protect the beehive. Bishamim, and during the rainy season, you go ahead and if you don't want to protect the beehive from the rain, you could go ahead and protect it for the beehive from the rain. And ubavad, as long as you don't have intention to catch the bees, because there are bees on the beehive, right? So if the bees on the beehive will allow you to cover the beehive on Shabbat, even though the beehive itself is mukseh. Why is the beehive mukseh? Because the beehive holds the bees. And when you hold the bees, the thing that holds the bees has a status, right? Good morning, David. When the Shabbat came, right, you had the bees on the beehive, right? So if you have the bees they're hanging out, right? Where did the bees hang out? Adam, they hang out on the beehives, right? David, is that where the bee? That's why it's called the beehive, right? They're over there. So when Shabbat came, the bees are animals. They're mukseh. The bees are alive. They're mukseh, and you are, and the beehive that holds the mukseh is considered a basis. It's holding the mukseh. It has the status of the mukseh as well. Whether the bee. So therefore, the beehive is the status of mukseh, and give you an allowance to cover the beehive. Now you can't trap. One of the melachot on Shabbat, you can't do. You can't trap on Shabbat. You can't go ahead and trap an animal on Shabbat. I see an animal. I want to go ahead and throw a net on an animal on Shabbat to catch the animal. I can't do that, right? That's a melacha on Shabbat, trapping. So I have to be careful that I don't intend to trap. And I think you have to say it's a case that it's not definitely a trapping. Because even if you don't intend to trap something, but if you know you're trapping, so that's called a psik reisha. If you know you're going to trap something, even though you don't intend, I don't intend to, I want to, I don't intend to trap, but I know I'm trapping, so that would be a problem. So, it's like the Gemara says, a guy's cutting off the head of the chicken, but he said, I don't want to kill the chicken. I just want to cut off its head. You know you're going to kill the chicken by cutting off its head. I'm not interested in cutting off its head. And killing it. I just want its head. So therefore, you're going to trap it. You can't trap. You can't cover it. So David, just to bring you up to date, we're discussing. There's an opinion in the Gemara. One of the rabbis had a strict opinion regarding mukseh. Not only can't you move a mukseh item like money on Shabbat, you can't move something that's not mukseh for the purpose of the mukseh. If I want to go ahead and cover the mukseh, I can't take a napkin and throw it on top of a blanket on top of the mukseh. That was this opinion. I can't take something that's mukseh and protect it on Shabbat with a non-mukseh item. That was this opinion. So the Gemara questions this opinion because here we have the story of the beehive, which the Gemara is saying is mukseh because it had the bees on it, or it has the bees on it, and therefore it's the beehive, and you want to cover the beehive to protect the beehive from the rain or from the sun. And it says you're allowed to do that. You can throw the mat on top, as long as you're not intending to catch the bee, And you know what? It could be that by throwing the mat on top of the beehive, even if there are beehives there, even if there's bees there, it could be that the bee could just slip out, right? You didn't make a tight covering, so therefore might not be capturing the bee by throwing the when you take it when there's a bee on a table and you cover it with a cup, you caught the bee. It seemed like you caught the bee. Um, so the Gemara says, "Hochamayaskinan." So the Gemara answers, "B'deika dvash." When this beehive has honey on it, so the honey is not mukseh, right? I'm going to go ahead and eat the honey. It's food. Since it's food on the beehive, so the fact that I'm covering the beehive with, I'm not covering a muksa item because it may be the beehive. Because the beehive didn't even become mukseh according to that, because that utensil that's called the beehive is holding a non-muksa item as well. It's true. It might be there's the bee there, but there's maybe a more important item that's not muksa, which is the honey. So therefore, the beehive doesn't become a beehive. What do you make a beehive from, right? Some sort of material, right? You make a beehive in order that the bee should make its honey over there, right? So the beehive is not muksa if the beehive is supporting has honey on it. So the Gemara shoots back. I look for information on Ravashi, which says that's only good in the summer. Tinach b'motachama. That's good in the summer. Now we're turning the page. The Ika Devash. In the summer morning, there's honey in the beehive. And therefore, you should be able to cover the beehive in the summertime to protect. You want to cover in the summertime because of the honey. You don't want the honey to get ruined from the sun. You could go ahead and do that. However, be a motak shamim, but in the rainy in the winter, morning Mars, when it's raining outside, there's no honey there. The Gemara understands there's no honey in the beehive in the summertime, in the wintertime when the rainy season. Mayikilamema. So how are you going to explain it? Meaning the Braita stated that you could go ahead and cover the beehive not only in the summertime to protect the honey, you could even cover the beehive in the winter, which would seemingly, what are you protecting in the winter? Seems like you're from the rain. What are you protecting? You're protecting the beehive itself. But the beehive itself, we said, is mukseh. If there's no honey on the beehive, so what do you got on the beehive? You only got bees. So that's the Gemara's question. According to the opinion that says, Mara, we're talking about, there's an opinion that says that you cannot move a movable item for the purpose of a mukseh item. You can't move a movable item for the purpose of protecting the mukseh. Not to move the mukseh, just to protect it. You want to throw something on top of the mukseh, not moving the mukseh. So there's an opinion that says I can't do that. So the Gemara is questioning that opinion because it seems from here that that's not true. Because we see that you can actually take a non-mukseh item, a mat, and throw it on top of the beehive to protect the beehive from the rain. And the Gemara's understanding there's no honey there in the winter time. So the Gemara says, Lo nitzracha elal oton shtei chalot. When we say you could cover in the winter time, we're talking about there was 2 cakes of honey that they would leave during the winter to be there for the purpose of the bees. And therefore, those 2 chalot, and they're there, but they also fit for people to eat. Those 2 cakes of honey are fit for people to eat. And since they're fit for people to eat, so you could go ahead and throw the mat. So therefore, when you're throwing the mat on the beehive in the winter time, you're protecting the honey. And even though the honey is, the Gemara is saying, but the honey is there for the purpose of the bees to give them throughout the winter, to be some food for them. But the Gemara is saying, but they're fit. It's honey, it's there for the bees, but it's also fit for human consumption. Therefore, the Gemara says it's not mukseh. Now, the Gemara says, the Gemara shoots back, v'muksanenu. If you designated that food, that the honey cakes, the 2 honey cakes on the beehive, you designated it for the purpose of the bees, and the bees are mukseh, and I don't plan on using that for my food purposes. So the Gemara says that should be mukseh. It's not, meaning I put it there, I leave it there. It's not that I'm involved with it. I put it there and I leave it there for the bees throughout the winter. So if I leave it there for the bees, it's separated from me from use. If it's separated from me for use, so it should be mukseh. And if it's mukseh, so again, if I'm covering the honey during the winter time, so the rain should not go on the honey, it should be a problem according to Rabbi Yitzchak, because I'm protecting a mukseh item. Don't tell me it's honey, it's food, but that food was designated to use for who? For the bees, and that's nothing to do with me anymore. I'm disconnected from that. It's separated from me, so it should be mukseh. So the Gemara answers the chashav alayu, that before Shabbat, you said, you had your tongue, you had a sweet tongue before Shabbat. Whatever it was, you said you wanted to use that honey, you had a mind to use that honey on Shabbat. Since you had a mind to use that honey on Shabbat, therefore it's considered, you weren't separated from it. You planned on eating it. So you're not separated from it. Therefore, you could take a mat and cover the beehive that contains these 2 cakes of honey. So based on this, you also you can look at the question of pet food on Shabbat. Pet food is not, now there's certain things you have, you have a mitzvah to feed your animals, right? But the question would be, once you put food, you already put the food down for the animal, right? And it's not fit for me. So based on this Gemara, it would seem once you put the food down for the animal, that pet food, it would seem from the Gemara, that's mukseh. I have nothing to do with the pet food anymore. I put it where it needs to go. I'm not talking about the pet food that I'm serving. We're not discussing what I'm giving to the animal on Shabbat itself, right? We're talking about pet food that was already given to the pet. You placed it ready for the pet. We'll see from our Gemara that would be mukseh. We have to look more into the laws of mukseh and pet food. Have a great day. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you, David, for joining us. What I say? Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. She had it, but I want to